Hey, welcome! You know, every single time you buy something, you're not just exchanging money for a product. You're actually entering into a contract. And what's wild is that this contract comes with a set of powerful, unspoken promises that are always working in your favor. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and reveal exactly what they are.
Oh man, I think we've all been there, right? You get super excited, you bring your new purchase home, you unbox it, and it's the wrong color, it doesn't even turn on, or maybe it's just completely different from what you were expecting. It is so frustrating. But here's the good news. You are not powerless in that situation. Not even close.
And look, these aren't some extra warranties you have to pay for or a special store policy that you have to hunt for in the fine print. Nope, these are automatic, legally implied terms that are part of the deal whether the seller ever mentions them or not. Think of them as your secret superpowers as a buyer. Let's break them down one by one. Okay, first up is the most fundamental promise of all. When you buy something, you should actually own it. Now that sounds totally obvious, right? But the law gets really specific about what ownership truly means. And trust me, it's way more than just having the item in your hands. So the law splits this big promise into three smaller pieces. The first one, right to sell, is what's called a condition. That means it's a total deal breaker. If the seller didn't have the legal right to sell you that thing in the first place, the whole deal is off. The other two are called warranties, smaller but still super important promises. Quiet possession means you can enjoy your new gadget without someone else knocking on your door saying they have a better claim to it. And free from charges ensures it doesn't come with any hidden debts attached that could sneak up on you later.
So you've bought it, you legally own it, awesome. But what happens when the product you actually get isn't the one you thought you were buying? This is a massive issue, especially now that we all shop online so much. Well, the law has a very specific promise for this exact problem.
And that brings us to our second promise. The goods you buy must match their description. All those words, the pictures, the specs they use to sell an item, that's not just marketing fluff. They actually form a core part of the sales contract itself.
And yep, this is another one of those conditions, a complete deal breaker. If you buy something that's described as a 100% cashmere sweater, it has to be exactly that. If you buy a phone that's described as brand new, it absolutely cannot be a refurbished one. And what's really fascinating here is that the description is king. Even if you saw a sample of the product, if the written description says something different, it's the description that legally counts. All right, let's keep going. You own it, and it perfectly matches the description online. But you plug it in, you flick the switch, and nothing. It's a total dud. This is where we get into what might be the most important promise of them all, the basic expectation of quality. You guessed it, promise number 3 is all about whether the product actually does its job. But the law's smarter than just saying it should work. It actually creates 2 different levels or standards for quality depending on your specific situation. Okay, you have to appreciate how smart this is. On one hand, you've got the default standard merchantable quality. This is the baseline. It just means a product has to be fit for its normal everyday purpose. A kettle has to boil water. A pen has to write. Simple, right? But then you have fitness for purpose. This is a whole other level. This is for when you go to a seller and say, hey, I need a waterproof jacket for a week-long trek in the Amazon rainforest, and you rely on their recommendation. The jacket they sell you absolutely must be fit for that specific, intense purpose you described. Now, to get this higher level of protection, you got to check a few boxes. You have to have told the seller exactly what you needed it for, and you have to show that you are really relying on their expertise. But there's one big exception here. If you walk into a store and just ask for the brand X Super Drill by name, you're relying on your own judgment, not theirs. So in that case, this special protection doesn't apply. Okay, let's shift gears for a minute and think about a different kind of buying. Imagine you're ordering, say, 1,000 custom-printed mugs for your company, or a huge batch of tiles for a new kitchen. You approve one perfect sample, but how can you be sure the entire massive order will be just as good? And that leads us right to our fourth and final promise, which is designed specifically for sales by sample. The law totally gets that when you're buying in bulk, that one little sample you approve is everything. It becomes the gold standard for the entire order. This promise has 3 really clear rules. First, the bulk order has to match the sample in quality. That's a given, right?
Second, you have to be given a fair chance to actually compare the big order to the original sample. But this third rule, this one is the real game changer. The final products can't have some hidden flaw that you couldn't possibly have found just by looking at the sample. So if that one-tile sample seemed perfect, but the whole batch cracks under normal pressure, the seller has broken this promise.
So there you have it, 4 incredibly powerful unspoken promises that are automatically on your side in pretty much every single purchase you make. You shouldn't think of this as complicated legal stuff, but as your own personal buyer's toolkit. Let's just run through them one last time real quick. Number 1, it's truly yours. You have the right to own it and use it without hassle. 2, it has to be exactly as it was described. 3, it has to work, either for its normal job or for that specific job you told the seller about. And 4, if you're buying based on a sample, the whole order has to be just as good. You know, the most important thing here is that just understanding these rights completely changes the dynamic. You're no longer just crossing your fingers and hoping a product is good. You are now backed by a solid legal expectation that it will be. This knowledge is like your invisible shield, protecting you every time you shop.
So the next time you're about to click Buy Now or head to the checkout, just remember these 4 promises. They're always there, working for you behind the scenes. And that really just leaves us with one final thought. Now that you know this, how is it going to change the way you shop?